But before we dive into the disturbing tales of the night, let me ask you, do you have the courage to stay until the end? Most viewers don't subscribe to the channel, perhaps out of oversight, or perhaps because after hearing these stories, they never slept the same way again. If you think you can handle it, click subscribe now.
My name is Eli Carter. I'm 22 years old, and I grew up in a forgotten little town in West Virginia called Hawksfield, a place surrounded by forests, hills, and silences, the kind that swallows sound and souls whole. Before anything else, I'm not writing this for attention or to fuel a creepypasta. I just need to tell this because I think she's still with me. And if she is, maybe she's with someone else too. I first heard the laughter when I was 4. I lived with my parents in my paternal grandparents' house, right on the edge of a ravine covered in twisted pines. It was a strange place even for a kid, full of the smell of mold, the sound of rats in the pipes, and a basement that no one ever opened. That night, according to my mother, she found me on the kitchen floor, sitting, laughing to myself, staring at the empty corner between the cabinet and the refrigerator. When she asked me who I was talking to, I replied, with the girl in blue. She froze, didn't say anything, just picked me up and took me to my room. I had this imaginary friend for months. I talked to her whenever I was alone. I said she liked to sit by the window, and that her dress had white flowers. She always smiled, always. But then things started to get weird. One day, the living room TV turned on by itself at 3 in the morning. The blender, microwave, kitchen lights, everything went off like someone had tripped the breaker from beyond. And in the middle of the chaos, there I was, sitting on the living room floor, laughing at the wall. After that night, my mother hastily moved us out of my grandparents' house. She said the atmosphere there had gotten worse. I never understood what she meant by that. Years later, already living with my maternal grandparents in another part of town, things calmed down. For a while, I was about 12 years old. I was alone doing homework in the living room. It was late, and then I heard that laughter again. Quiet, almost whispered, coming from the hallway. I ran to my little sister's room, thinking she had woken up. But she was sleeping, soundly. Mum, too. I went back to the living room, my heart beating fast. That's when I saw her, again, leaning against the window frame with the same blue dress, messy hair, and that empty smile. I froze for a couple of seconds until she turned her face, slowly, as if her bones didn't work properly, and then she vanished, literally, like dust dissolving in the air. I told my mother the next morning. She paled, swallowed hard, and then told me what I should never have known. You used to play with a girl, Eli, when you were about 3 years old, our neighbor's daughter. She fell off the cliff behind your grandfather's house. It was horrible. She was wearing a blue dress. She died instantly. Silence. You should never have remembered. Since then, whenever something bad is going to happen, I hear that laughter first. And now, after so long in peace, she's back. 3 nights ago, I saw her silhouette on the glass of my microwave, standing behind me. Same smile, same clothes. I don't know what she wants, but I feel that ravine, that cursed place, is still calling me. Maybe I have to go back there. Maybe that's the only way to end this for good. Or maybe that's exactly what she wants. Edit. I just woke up to a scratching on my window, 2nd floor. And on my bedroom wall, someone wrote in charcoal, "You forgot about me." My name is Miles. and I'm the oldest of 4 siblings. Today, I'm 24 years old, but what happened that night when I was 19 haunts me to this day, like a curse sewn into my skin. This was in Hawksfield, the same place as my previous story, a small, forgotten village, but full of things that nobody wants to see. It was a cold autumn night. My grandparents had invited us to a little birthday party, the typical neighborhood kind. Everyone was going, so we got dressed and went on foot. The party was about 10 minutes away. I went with my 3 sisters, the youngest, who was 3, in my arms. The middle one, who was 6, was holding hands with the oldest, who was 15. I looked after them like a father. I always have. On the way, right after the corner of the abandoned church, I felt the air change. It became heavy, cold. The kind of cold that goes right through your bones. I can't explain it. It felt like the street had lost its sound. No cars, no crickets, no barking. As if everything had stopped breathing for a second. Walk faster, I told my older sister, trying to stay calm. Don't let go of her for anything. We took about 20 more steps, and then came the first wail. It wasn't a scream, it was a long, painful cry that rose and fell like a drawn-out lament. It came from behind us, and it seemed to be carried by the wind. The dogs on the street started howling. A car alarm went off. My sister clung to my shirt tightly. It's just someone playing a prank. Halloween stuff, I lied. But deep down, I knew. A few more steps, ... second wail. This time closer, sharper, as if someone was crying with an open throat, as if they had lost everything. The temperature dropped even more. That's when it hit me. 3 wails. It's always 3. And then ... the third one came. It was as if the air tore around us. The streetlights flickered. The sound slammed inside my head, exploding my eardrums from the inside. I turned around, and there she was. At first, I thought she was just any woman asking for help. But when the streetlight flickered again, I saw her clearly. Her feet were destroyed, cut as if she had walked for miles on broken glass. The white dress, soaked, moldy, stained with mud and dried blood. Her long black hair covered almost her entire face. But when she raised her head, I saw. There were no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just holes, black voids that pulsed. She groaned again, and the sound ... came from inside me. My ears started to bleed. My knees buckled. The windows of the houses around us trembled. The car alarm went off again, and a pole fell at the end of the street. It was as if the world was running away from her. I grabbed my sisters. The youngest was trembling in my arms. The middle one was crying. The oldest couldn't move. I screamed with everything I had. Run, go, now. I dragged the 3 of them, literally, to the street where the party was. People came out of their houses when they saw us pale, almost fainting. We told them what happened. Some neighbors were in shock. Others ... simply made the sign of the cross. One of them, an old man named Mr. Fletcher, looked at us with pity and said, "She only appears to those who feel guilt." I never understood that until now, because there's something I've never told anyone. The night before, I left my little sister alone for a few minutes. She almost fell down the back stairs. She didn't tell anyone, but I guess someone did, and now, every time I hear the wind crying through the windows ... I lock all the doors, and I hope she's not calling me again. Today, while I was writing this, a message appeared written in vapor on my car window at 3 in the morning. "You still owe the last wail. I don't know what that means, but I know she's not done with me yet. I'm a police officer in Lake Haven, Louisiana, a secluded village surrounded by swamps, old cemeteries, and stories that nobody likes to tell aloud. Most of the town is made up of simple people, with traditions that seem to come from a time when the world was still wild. That morning, I was in the patrol car with my partner, Officer Donnie Reeves. It was just after midnight, quiet patrol. Clear sky, but with that strange fog that always descends around the old Chapel Hill Cemetery. Donnie was almost asleep, and I was already thinking about the coffee at the station when we heard it. A voice, "Help me, ... Quiet, tremulous, childlike. We both fell silent. The radio was muted, and the sound came from the direction of the cemetery gates. I parked the car and got out with the flashlight in hand. And there she was, a little girl about 10 years old, wearing worn-out overalls, barefoot, her hair plastered to her face by the dew, dirty, cold. Donnie froze. "Jake, this isn't good. Looks like a lost kid. Man, don't start." She said her name was Mary Ellen White, and that she was looking for her mother. She said she lived nearby and that her mother couldn't get out of the cemetery. That bothered me. We tried to contact the base. No record of the name. The gates were locked, but she wanted us to go in with her, and I jumped over, and so did Donnie. The girl ran ahead through old tombstones covered in moss, and the further we went, the more the cemetery seemed ... bigger. After almost half an hour of walking, Mary stopped. She pointed to 2 tombstones, side by side. "It's here." One of them had her mother's name, the other ... Hers, Mary Ellen White, 2009-2019. 10 years, the age she appeared to be. Donnie read the tombstone before me. He just murmured, "No, this isn't possible." I only remember taking a step back. My stomach churned. The cold increased. And then ... she laughed. Not loud. Not happy. That empty laughter. Soulless. Like a whisper coming from inside a well. When we turned around ... she had vanished. Donnie's flashlight failed. Mine went out completely. We tried to go back, but the path seemed different, as if the tombstones had changed places. The only thing we knew was that we needed to get out of there. We jumped back over the fence, got into the car without saying a word. Total silence. No radio, no wind. I swear my hand was still cold where I touched hers. The next day, I went back alone during the day. The 2 tombstones were there, and it wasn't a figment of my imagination. I got the records at the city hall. Mary Ellen White died 4 years ago, along with her mother, in a fire, in that same house next to the cemetery. Since then, nobody lives there, but residents say they sometimes see a girl alone at the gates of the mausoleum, sometimes at midnight, sometimes at 3:33 a.m., always saying, "Help. My mother can't get out." And sometimes she gets in the car with you, without you realizing it. Yesterday, 0:14 a.m., I received a call on the patrol car radio. "Deputy Jake, are you still with her?" I was alone. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, the back seat was wet, and there were small muddy footprints on the carpet. My name is Ashley Rose, and in 2021, I moved with my family to a secluded trail just outside of Valley Creek, Texas. It was a simple property, low rent, with an old but seemingly safe structure. We had moved out of necessity. My ex-boyfriend, Brandon, had been unemployed for months. I had 2 young children and was taking care of my elderly parents. The house was all we could afford, but already in the first week, things started to go wrong. At 5 a.m., Brandon went out to look for work. As he passed through the living room, he saw the TV on, even though no one had woken up. He turned it off, but seconds later, it turned on by itself. He thought it was an electrical fault. But then, the whole kitchen exploded in noise. Dishes, chairs, the coffee maker, everything fell as if it had been thrown forcefully. We ran to check. All the doors and windows were locked from the inside. There was no sign of intrusion, and that was just the beginning. On the second day, my dresser fell by itself. It was attached to the wall with screws. When I ran to get the children and came back, everything was back in place. The next day, at 2 a.m., we heard footsteps on the roof. Then, knocks on the walls. The pictures were shaking. The bathroom mirror cracked by itself. We lit blessed candles, left the Bible open at Psalm 91, and even so, the television would lower the volume by itself when we played religious music, or it would turn off completely. We started to see shadows passing through the doors, even with everyone in the same room. I knew the house didn't want us there. We tried to resist. My brother, Carlos, lived across the street. We called him to spend a few days with us. When he arrived, he thought we were exaggerating, until he saw it for himself. At 3:17 in the morning, the Bible that we had left on the table appeared fallen on the floor. The TV was on by itself, at maximum volume, on a black screen, and the pictures on the wall were on the floor, all of them aligned, a pattern, on the same day, while we were packing our bags to leave. The door of my younger brother's room slammed shut by itself with absurd force, right in front of us. We fled without taking anything, only with the clothes on our backs. We stayed 2 months at Carlos' house. Even there, the lights flickered, objects moved. A presence, followed us. When we returned to the trail, the house was heavier than ever. Everyone argued. The atmosphere was rotten. One day, we went on a trip for a few days. We left my mother and my brother Elvis at the house. Carlos called me in the middle of the night. "Ashley, there's someone in front of the house. A man. He's just standing there." "Are you sure?" "He's all black. Like a solid shadow. He doesn't move." We rushed to get my mother and brother out of there. And since that day, nobody wanted to go back. But even far away, the symptoms didn't disappear. I started to wake up with scratches on my back, as if something had squeezed me during the night. My children trembled, pointing to empty corners, crying. I started to hear voices, not with my ears, but inside my head. They said, "This house is yours now. The door has been opened. You are what is missing." One day, my mother came into the room and saw handprints on my skin, as if I had been grabbed while I was sleeping. But I was alone. The marks returned for 3 nights in a row. We went to a church. We sought help for a while. It worked. But then, it came back worse. It was as if the house had marked us. In 2023, we finally got out of there. We went to another city, far away, and since then, we have never seen or heard anything again. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I feel like there's someone on the other side of the bedroom door, waiting. And on very quiet nights, I swear I hear the voice of the house, repeating, "You are what is missing."